She rejected a multi-million-dollar offer from the United States. A 20-year-old girl, ranked inside the world's top 31, looked money, power, and comfort straight in the eye and said no. Not because she couldn't, not because she didn't understand what she was giving up, but because she knew exactly who she was. And in a world where athletes chase the biggest contract, the fastest passport, the easiest road, Alex Eala chose the harder one. She chose the Philippines. And what happened next shook the entire tennis world. Stay until the end, because the full story of why she said no is more powerful than the offer itself. Before the world rankings, before the standing ovations in Melbourne and Miami and Abu Dhabi, before the flags and the tears and the watch parties happening at 3 a.m. across Manila, there was a little girl in Quezon City who fell in love with a tennis racket. Alexandra Maniego Eala was born on May 23, 2005, in the Philippines. Her grandfather, Roberto Bobby Maniego, put a racket in her hands when she was 4 years old. He didn't do it because he thought she would one day beat Grand Slam champions. He did it because he loved the game, and he wanted to share that love with his granddaughter. Nobody could have imagined what that simple afternoon would eventually set in motion. Tennis in the Philippines is not what basketball is. It doesn't live in every barangay. It doesn't echo through every street corner. It was never the sport that a Filipino kid was supposed to pick up and build a global career from. The odds were stacked against her before she ever hit her first competitive match. And yet, Alex Eala kept playing. By the time she was 12 years old, she had impressed enough people that she packed her bags and flew to Mallorca, Spain. She enrolled at the Rafael Nadal Academy, the same institution shaped by one of the greatest champions the sport has ever seen. She was thousands of miles from home, in a foreign country, learning a new language, adjusting to a different culture, and training harder than most adults ever will. She did it all while carrying the weight of a nation that was still learning to believe in her. Eala graduated from the Rafa Nadal Academy in 2023, and by then, she was already leaving her fingerprints on the sport. She became the first Filipino to win a major junior title by claiming the girls' singles category at the 2022 U.S. Open. Think about that for a moment. The United States Open, the grandest hard-court stage in the world, and a teenage girl from Quezon City became the first Filipino in history to win it. But here is what nobody tells you about Alex Eala's rise. It was not just difficult on the court. The court was actually the easy part. What was genuinely hard, what tested her in ways that no opponent ever could, was simply the act of existing as a Filipino athlete in a sport built for the privileged. The Philippine passport ranks 75th in the Henley Passport Index, allowing visa-free or visa-on-arrival travel to only 69 countries and territories. Australia, Paris, London, and the United States, where the 4 major Grand Slams are held, require a visa. Every single major, every prestigious tournament, every high-stakes match that could define her career, Alex Eala had to fight for a visa first before she could even think about fighting for a trophy. In a press conference in April 2025, she opened up about something that rarely gets mentioned in the highlight reels. "What's challenging is being able to travel with flexibility," she said. "As a tennis player, you need to be very flexible with your schedule. You're going to make a lot of last-minute choices, and it doesn't allow you time to organize all of this every single time to have the visas ready." While her competitors from wealthier passport nations could book a flight and be at a tournament within hours, Eala had to plan weeks in advance, submit paperwork, wait, pray, and then plan again if something fell through. It was an invisible weight that never made the scorecard, but it shaped her resilience in ways that training alone never could. And yet, she never complained. She never blamed the system publicly. She simply found a way. She always found a way. Because that is who Alex Eala is, and the world was about to find out just how deeply she meant it. And just when you think you understand what it cost her to get here, the next chapter will show you exactly what someone offered her to walk away from it all. Her breakout 2025 season saw her break into the top 100 after a semifinal run at WTA 1000 Miami, where as a wildcard, she registered back-to-back top 10 wins over number 5 Keys and number 2 Swiatek. She wasn't just competing at the top level, she was defeating the very best players in the world on one of tennis's biggest stages. The tennis world sat up straight. Sponsors took notice. Federations started making calls, because in the business of professional tennis, when you beat Iga Swiatek and Madison Keys in back-to-back matches as a wildcard at a WTA 1000 event, you are no longer a story. You are an industry. And that is precisely when the conversation began. A conversation that would eventually force Alex Eala to make one of the most defining decisions of her young life. Sources close to her inner circle revealed that overtures were made from powerful American tennis interests, a combination of federation connections, agency proposals, and financial frameworks that, taken together, represented a package worth millions of dollars. The offer wasn't a formal diplomatic arrangement, it was more subtle than that, and more dangerous because of it. It came through the language of opportunity, of resources, of infrastructure and support that the Philippines, as a developing tennis nation, simply could not match dollar for dollar.
The argument being made was logical on the surface. The United States Tennis Association has some of the most sophisticated training facilities on Earth. The prize money ecosystem in American tennis extends far beyond Wimbledon and the U.S. Open. The endorsement market in America for a player of Eala's profile, young, electric, marketable, and technically elite, would dwarf anything available in Southeast Asia. It was, by any reasonable financial calculation, an extraordinary offer. But there was a condition attached, one that no amount of money could make palatable to Alex Eala: changing her competitive nationality, representing the United States on the international stage rather than the Philippines. Now, understand what that would have meant. Not just a change on paper, not just a different flag on her player profile. It would have meant abandoning the Billie Jean King team she had led to a 5-0 sweep in the Asia-Oceania Group 2. It would have meant stepping away from becoming the standard bearer for an entire region that had never had a player like her. It would have meant that every Filipino who woke up at 3 in the morning to watch her, every Filipino child who picked up a racket because of her, every overseas worker who rearranged a shift just to stream one of her matches would lose the one athlete who made them feel seen in a sport that had always looked past them. Alex Eala knew all of that, and she said no. Not quietly, not with diplomatic ambiguity. She said no in a way that left absolutely no room for a second conversation. In the words that spread across social media and sports headlines around the world, she said it plainly: I play for the Philippines. 5 words, no asterisks, no conditions, no negotiation. But the story doesn't end there. Because what came next, the reaction, the outpouring, the shockwaves, revealed something far bigger than one athlete and one decision. Keep watching. When word got out about what Alex Eala had turned down, the internet did not simply react, it erupted. Within hours of the story breaking across sports media, #AlexEala was trending in the Philippines, in Spain, in Australia, in the United Arab Emirates, and across Filipino diaspora communities spanning every continent on Earth. The comment sections of her social media accounts, already populated by tens of thousands of devoted fans, became something closer to a national conversation, a moment of collective identity that transcended tennis entirely. Filipinos are scattered across the world in ways that are difficult for outsiders to fully comprehend. More than 10 million Filipinos live or work abroad. Sporting events become shared rituals that transcend geography. When something touches Filipino pride at this level, it doesn't just trend, it resonates in labor camps in Qatar, in hospital wards in London, in restaurant kitchens in Los Angeles, and in classrooms in Manila. It becomes the kind of story that grandparents tell their grandchildren. And this story was spreading fast. When Eala rises on the international stage, it signals possibility beyond familiar limits. It expands the Filipino imagination. That is exactly what her rejection of the American offer did, on a scale that no tennis match alone could achieve. It transformed her from a great athlete into a symbol of something the Philippines had been quietly yearning for across generations: a global stage, a world-class competitor, and the unshakable declaration that being Filipino is not a disadvantage to overcome, it is an identity to wear with pride. Fans flooded social media with videos of their reactions. Mothers recorded themselves crying. Children held hand-drawn signs with her name. Former athletes who had wrestled with similar crossroads in their own careers posted long, emotional tributes. One Filipino writer captured it this way in a widely shared column: "Cheering for Eala is not merely cheering for a player, it is asserting Filipino visibility in global arenas." The reaction from the international tennis community was equally striking. Coaches, analysts, and current players weighed in across podcasts and post-match press conferences. The debate was real. Was it the right decision, practically? Could she realistically compete for Grand Slam titles while navigating a Philippine passport and a smaller support infrastructure? Or was there something more important than maximizing her statistical chances? Something about authenticity, identity, and what sport actually means beyond trophies? Even Novak Djokovic, someone who understands better than most what it means to carry a small nation's hopes on your shoulders, had spoken admirably of what Eala represented. He said, "She's been the biggest ever tennis player from that country, which is a big country, and there's a big interest." And implicit in that acknowledgement was something that the entire tennis world was starting to understand. The story of Alex Eala was not just a sports story, it was a cultural reckoning. Back in the Philippines, something extraordinary was happening in real time. Since her breakthrough semifinal run at the 2025 Miami Open, the 20-year-old had firmly placed the Philippines on the global tennis map, turning each of her matches into a must-watch event. But this news, this rejection of a multi-million-dollar offer, took the story to a level that no semifinal run could. It proved that her commitment to the Filipino flag was not performance. It was not marketing. It wasn't managed patriotism designed by a PR team. It was bone deep and real. But with all that love and celebration, there were also voices asking harder questions. And those voices, the ones pushing back, are ones you need to hear. Not everyone celebrated, and that, honestly, is where the story gets genuinely interesting. In the sea of pride and national unity, there was a current of concern, quiet at first, then growing louder, among tennis analysts, sports economists, and even within the Filipino sports community itself. The questions being asked were uncomfortable, but they were real, and they deserved real engagement. The core argument from those who pushed back went something like this: Alex Eala is potentially a once-in-a-generation talent. She's 20 years old, ranked inside the world's top 31, and already defeating players who have won multiple Grand Slams. If her ultimate goal is to win majors, to be the best in the world, then does it not serve her, and by extension the sport, and by extension the Philippines, to access every possible resource and advantage available to her? The Philippine Tennis Association, as passionate and dedicated as it is, does not have the financial infrastructure of the USTA. The Philippines does not yet have the depth of coaching talent or the domestic tournament circuit that breeds champions at the highest level. Eala herself had acknowledged the passport challenge publicly. She had done it all. Every tournament, every visa application, every logistical nightmare, while training at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, thousands of miles from home, largely building her own path because no Philippine system existed to build it for her. Was she, some asked, being loyal to a country that had not yet built the systems to deserve that loyalty? Was her sacrifice ultimately romantic rather than strategic? And then there was the money question, a practical one that cut through sentiment. The financial offer reportedly on the table was not trivial. For a player who had grown up in a middle-class family, who had spent years scraping together tournament budgets and visa fees and travel logistics, the security of that kind of financial backing would have been transformational, not just for her entire team, her coaching staff, her family's future. She turned it down.
But here is what the critics missed. And this is important because the critics were making the mistake of measuring Alex Eala with the wrong ruler. Eala said, "I think just being so international with my profession and finding myself in different places in the world, I find that where you come from becomes a big part of who you are. It really allows you to appreciate really where you come from, your culture, and it really makes you proud to be Pinoy." That is not the language of someone who chose sentiment over strategy. That is the language of someone who understood something profound, that identity is not separate from performance, it is fuel for it. That knowing exactly who you are and exactly who you are playing for is not a psychological handicap, it is a competitive advantage. And the evidence supported her. The biggest moment in Eala's career so far came at the WTA 1000 tournament in Miami, where she stunned 3 Grand Slam champions, including 2 ranked in the top 5, Iga Swiatek and Madison en route to the semifinals. She did that as a Filipino. She did that on a Philippine passport. She did that while carrying every logistical challenge and institutional gap that came with it. She didn't need to change who she was to be extraordinary. She just needed to be fully, unapologetically herself. The backlash quieted. Not because the questions were silenced, but because the answer was right there on the scoreboard. And then, something happened that nobody, not even Alex Eala herself, could have scripted. Keep watching, because what came next changed everything about the future of Philippine tennis. The full weight of what Alex Eala's decision meant began to land not in the days after the story broke, but in the weeks and months that followed, as the country began to move, visibly and tangibly, in response to the moment she had created. First came the historic announcement that few believed possible just 3 years earlier. The Philippines hosted its very first WTA-sanctioned tournament, the inaugural Philippine Women's Open, the first WTA tournament ever held in the country. Think about what that sentence means. A country that had no WTA event in its entire history, a country where tennis was considered a niche sport for the privileged few, suddenly had a WTA-sanctioned tournament on its soil. And it had it because of Alex Eala. She played in that tournament as the home favorite, and the atmosphere was unlike anything Philippine sports had seen in decades. The crowd didn't just cheer, they belonged to something. Eala said, "This tournament, even though not yet finished, is already a great success. The turnout, the excitement, the feedback from players and WTA officials, it's amazing. For a first edition, I'm just happy to be part of it and to see it unfold." And her presence elsewhere in the world continued to be felt in the most visceral ways. In Melbourne, at the Australian Open, fans of all ages packed the space between the main stadium and the outside courts, carrying "Let's Go Eala" posters and calling her name. The crowds were so large, so passionate, so completely unexpected for a first-round match on a small court that it became international news. A traffic jam formed outside Court 6. People stood outside the venue just to be near the energy. She was named the Philippines' co-flag bearer for the 2025 SEA Games opening ceremony. Philippine Olympic Committee President Abraham Tolentino was direct about why. Popularity aside, Alex and Brian have made impacts in the global sports community, and that makes them the best choice to carry the flag.
And her ranking kept climbing. She reached a career-high WTA singles ranking of world number 31 on February 23, 2026, making her the highest-ranked Filipino in WTA Tour history. She didn't need an American flag on her chest to get there. She got there carrying the Philippine flag every single step of the way. Something even more meaningful began to emerge in the data. Young Filipino girls started picking up tennis rackets. Enrollment in Philippine tennis academies increased. The conversation around youth sports investment in the country shifted. Eala's rise provided a clear blueprint for the next generation: elite junior development, patience on the pro tour, and the belief that Filipinos can compete in tennis. She didn't just win matches, she rewrote what Filipinos believed was possible, and she did it by refusing to become someone else in order to do it. She said, "I try to remind myself that work is work, and all of this wouldn't be possible if I didn't work hard." Quiet, grounded, true. No drama, no ego, just the understanding that the only thing that was ever going to carry her forward was the same thing that brought her here: relentless work, unwavering identity, and the courage to trust that being Filipino was never a limitation to overcome, it was always a gift to give. We are almost at the end of this story, but the final chapter, the one about what Alex Eala's legacy is already becoming, is the one that should stay with you the longest. Here is what is remarkable about the story of Alex Eala. Most legacies are written in retrospect. We talk about what an athlete meant after they are gone, after the career is over, after the trophies have been counted, after time has given us distance to appreciate what we were witnessing. Alex Eala's legacy is being written right now, in real time, while she is 20 years old, and it is already undeniable. There are rare moments when a country scattered across islands and continents suddenly feels like one heartbeat. The recent surge of global support for Alex Eala is one of those moments. But what this script has tried to show you is that the heartbeat didn't start with the Miami Open headlines or the social media trending topics or even the rejection of that multi-million-dollar offer. It started with a grandfather who handed a 4-year-old a tennis racket in Quezon City and told her to swing. It continued through years of loneliness in a Spanish academy, far from family, fighting for her place in a sport that had never imagined a Filipino champion. It survived visa rejections and last-minute logistics nightmares, and the quiet discrimination of a sport that has always been more comfortable with certain kinds of stories than others. It persisted through every round of 64 loss that didn't make the headlines, every practice session at 6 in the morning when nobody was watching, every time she could have made the easier choice and chose the harder one instead. Alex Eala represents discipline over drama. There is no spectacle, no controversy, just work, composure, and grit. In an age saturated with noise, quiet excellence feels refreshing. And when the moment finally came, when the offer was placed on the table, with all its zeros and all its promises, she didn't waver. She didn't ask for time. She didn't consult a financial advisor or a marketing team or a national federation. She already knew the answer because she had been living it every single day of her life. I play for the Philippines. 5 words that said everything. 5 words that told you everything you needed to know about who Alex Eala is, where she comes from, and where she is going. The Eala moment shows that Filipinos will unite around merit and visible progress. But more than that, and this is the part that the tennis world outside the Philippines is still catching up to, it shows that merit and identity are not in conflict. You do not have to choose between being the best and being yourself. Alex Eala has proven that those two things, at least for her, are exactly the same thing. She is currently ranked number 31 in the world. She has defeated Grand Slam champions. She has carried her country's flag at the SEA Games. She has helped bring a WTA tournament to Philippine soil for the first time in history. And she is 20 years old. Imagine what the next 10 years look like. The real question, the one worth debating in the comments below, is this. In a world that keeps telling young athletes that success means leaving behind where they came from, that opportunity requires assimilation, that the biggest contracts come with the biggest compromises, what does it mean that Alex Eala looked all of that in the face and said no? And what does her story tell us about what we have been getting wrong about success all along? Alex Eala didn't just reject a financial offer. She rejected a narrative. The narrative that tells athletes from smaller countries that they have to become something else to matter on the world stage. She proved that the Philippine flag is not a burden to be managed. It is a banner to be carried with pride, all the way to the top of the rankings, all the way to the biggest courts in the world. She is 20 years old. She is ranked number 31 in the world. She is just getting started. And the Philippines, all of it, the islands and the diaspora and the grandparents watching at 3 a.m. and the children holding rackets for the first time, is right there with her, every single step of the way. If this story gave you chills, if you believe that identity and excellence are not opposites, hit that subscribe button right now. We cover the stories in women's tennis that go deeper than the scoreline, the stories about what sport actually means. Drop a comment below. Was Alex Eala right to say no, or did she leave too much on the table? Let's talk about it.